In the world of Hollywood's golden age, the stories we were told were framed by glamour, by charm, by fame. But what happens when the cameras stop rolling? What happens when the public's adoration fades into the dark corners of the studio lot? For many of the icons we once revered, the reality behind their dazzling personas was far darker than we could ever have imagined. For decades, the legends of Hollywood were built on silence, on cruelty, on exploitation. Behind the bright smiles, the perfect lighting, and the movie magic, there were predators, tyrants, and the damaged souls who paid the price. These were the stars who, despite the public's worship, destroyed lives and fed off their fame. It was a system designed to protect the powerful and silence the victims. And as I reflect on the truths we've buried, I ask, what if we no longer let them remain hidden? Errol Flynn, the devil behind the smile. Before there was James Bond, before there was Jack Sparrow, there was Errol Flynn, the swashbuckling hero who captivated audiences with his reckless charm and irresistible allure. Flynn embodied the image of a dashing adventurer, the kind of man who could steal your heart in a single glance. But off-screen, Flynn was something darker. Born in 1909 in Tasmania, he arrived in Hollywood in the 1930s and became an overnight sensation after Captain Blood, 1935. He had it all: fortune, and the kind of charisma that made him a household name. But beneath the polish, there was arrogance, addiction, and a sense of entitlement that led him to do things no one should ever have the power to get away with. By 1942, Flynn's reputation began to crumble. Two teenage girls, Peggy Satterlee and Betty Hansen, accused him of statutory rape. The trial that followed shocked America. Flynn laughed through the court proceedings, mocking the very charges against him as though his stardom made him untouchable. Warner Brothers hired the best lawyers money could buy, and studio executives secretly paid witnesses to disappear. In the end, Flynn was acquitted, but the damage was done. His behavior only became worse. In private letters revealed in 1978, Flynn bragged about his sexual conquests and mocked the women who had once feared him. Ron Howard, upon reading about the trial, described it as the moment when he realized the truth. Hollywood could protect monsters if they smiled for the camera. Flynn lived a life of excess, and by 1959, he was consumed by it. At just 50 years old, his body finally gave out, collapsing from years of abuse. His autopsy revealed the extent of his self-destruction: heart failure, cirrhosis, and stomach ulcers. But to Ron Howard, the cause was simpler. Flynn died as he lived, taking everything and giving nothing. His story would become the blueprint for Hollywood's moral decay, a dark reminder that charm can hide cruelty, and fame, in the end, forgives no one. Kirk Douglas, the man who couldn't stop fighting. Kirk Douglas was a contradiction, a walking paradox. To millions, he was a symbol of honor, strength, and justice. The kind of man who fought for what he believed in, on screen and off. Born Ezer Danielovich in 1916, Douglas rose from poverty to stardom, carving his name into the annals of Hollywood history. His performance in Spartacus, 1960, solidified his place as a global icon, a man who had everything: fame, wealth, and respect. But those who worked with him knew a different story. Douglas's temper was a beast that never turned off. Crew members described him as impossible to please, prone to sudden outbursts of rage that left people in tears. Actress Deborah Paget once remarked that Douglas didn't just want to dominate a scene, he wanted to dominate everyone in it. There's a kind of rage under that smile, Howard said years later, the kind that eats a person alive. This rage followed Douglas throughout his career, casting a shadow over his performances and his legacy. Behind closed doors, whispers swirled about his behavior toward women. In the 1950s, rumors emerged of his involvement in the rape of actress Natalie Wood when she was just 16. Though the claim was never proven, the story was buried under the same machine of silence that protected so many powerful men. Years later, when Douglas accepted an honorary Oscar in 1996, some saw it as a moment of peace. But for Ron Howard, it was the final act of a man who had spent his life outrunning his own demons. Beneath the applause lay a truth that Hollywood had always feared to face. Some of its greatest legends built their careers not on brilliance, but on fear. Faye Dunaway, the queen of cruelty. Faye Dunaway's rise to stardom was meteoric, and yet, behind her beauty and icy charm, there was cruelty. She was a force of nature on screen, from her portrayal of Bonnie Parker in Bonnie and Clyde, 1967, to her unforgettable role in Chinatown, 1974. But off-screen, Dunaway was a tyrant. She ruled the set with an iron fist, demanding perfection at any cost. Crew members whispered about her tantrums, her outbursts of rage, and the terror she instilled in those who worked with her. Her role in Mommy Dearest, 1981, a film about the abusive Joan Crawford, seemed to foreshadow her own behavior. Stories from the set were chilling, objects were thrown, assistants were humiliated, and the atmosphere on set was one of constant fear. Ron Howard later reflected on Dunaway as an example of what happens when an actor's need for control turns into emotional terrorism. Dunaway's career eventually crumbled under the weight of her cruelty. Directors refused to work with her, and by the 2000s she was a pariah in Hollywood. Her downfall wasn't swift. It was a slow unraveling. The woman who once ruled Hollywood ended up isolated, avoided even at retrospectives of her own films. For Ron Howard, she symbolized the price of cruelty. Talent without empathy eventually destroys itself. John Wayne, the tyrant of the West. Few figures loomed as large over Hollywood as John Wayne. To millions, he was the quintessential American hero. A fearless cowboy, a rugged soldier, the epitome of masculinity. But to Ron Howard, the reality behind Wayne's screen persona was far more disturbing. Howard, who grew up watching Wayne's films, later admitted, "I stopped seeing the hero. I saw the bully who wore his country like a costume." Wayne's rise to fame was built on the myth of unshakable masculinity, a myth he fiercely defended. On film sets, he ruled with intimidation, belittling anyone who failed to meet his expectations. He was known for making racist and sexist remarks, and his 1971 interview with Playboy remains one of the most disturbing documents of Hollywood's golden age. His comments about Native Americans and black people were filled with hate, revealing not a patriot but a man trapped in bitterness. When Wayne clashed with director John Ford on the set of The Searchers, 1956, it was more than just a professional disagreement. It was a battle over how Wayne's character, Ethan Edwards, would be portrayed. Ford wanted to portray Edwards as a man with a moral compass, but Wayne insisted on portraying him as a racist, vengeful Confederate. For Ron Howard, that performance was terrifying because the line between the character and the actor was almost non-existent. Even in his final years, weakened by cancer, Wayne never apologized for his actions. His bitterness remained. Roman Polanski, the exile of shame. Roman Polanski's name became synonymous with brilliance and evil in equal measure. His rise to fame was meteoric. Born in Paris in 1933 to Polish parents, Polanski's breakout films Knife in the Water, 1962, and Rosemary's Baby, 1968, made him a visionary director. But the darkness that haunted his films wasn't fiction. It was a reflection of his own soul. In 1977, Polanski was arrested for the sexual assault of 13-year-old Samantha Gay. He fled the United States before sentencing, never to return. Hollywood was divided. Some condemned him. Others defended him as a tortured artist. For Ron Howard, the reaction was devastating. "They spoke of art while a child's life was broken," he said. Polanski's exile became one of Hollywood's greatest moral stains. Despite his crime, he continued to win awards, including an Oscar for The Pianist, 2003, a moment that Howard described as surreal and sickening. To him, the standing ovation was not a celebration of brilliance, but a celebration of hypocrisy. Mickey Rooney, the smile that lied. Mickey Rooney was Hollywood's first true child superstar, and for a time, he was the face of joy. But for Ron Howard, the discovery of who Rooney truly was came as a shock. Behind that smile, there was misery, and worse, he spread it. Rooney's career was built on charm and cheer, but fame at that scale warped him early. He married 8 times, gambled away millions, and humiliated those who loved him. But it was in his later years that the darkness truly revealed itself. In 2011, Rooney's 8th wife and stepson were accused of elder abuse and financial manipulation. But the damage Rooney had done to others was already legend. His ex-wife, Ava Gardner, once called him the shortest man with the biggest ego in the world. His story is a testament to the illusion of Hollywood, the idea that charm could erase cruelty. For Ron Howard, these stories were never about revenge. They were warnings. The golden age of Hollywood wasn't made of gold. It was built on silence, exploitation, and broken lives hidden behind fame. And as Howard once said, the scariest monsters aren't in horror films. They're the ones the spotlight protects.